We live in wearying times. Do you have any idea who to trust anymore? It's like, who's on this side or that side? I mean, my university now is in the middle of the protests, and you say, are we going to trust this coverage of it or that coverage of it? Is it Tucker who's going to have it right? Is it the Daily Wire? No, we know it's not the Daily Wire. But, you know, who out there in the media can we actually trust to tell us the truth? And, oh, you know, if only, like they team up with each other and then they get in a fight and someone leaves and then so-and-so is disloyal and then there's disagreements and stuff. I mean, it's positively medieval. We're here to tell you tonight how exactly medieval it is. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. Yeah, so who do you trust? Anybody? I mean, do we have anybody left? I mean, we know we can't trust the mainstream media. We learned that a long time ago.
You know, hashtag trustworthy, you know, or is it promo code trustworthy? Yeah.
and so, you know, we got this, it's like a whole constellation of characters out there telling us trust, mistrust. It's like, no, we don't trust any of you. But, you know, we out here in Telegram land and unauthorized, we're used to kind of hanging off the edge and looking around the corner and saying, well, indeed, who do we trust? Even to like stay loyal to each other. We're done. This was inspired a few weeks ago. We actually were talking about back when. How did we get started on this theme? Well, Candace Owens was working for the Daily Wire, and then they ditched her because they didn't want her saying stuff about Christ, and then
which is not their official story because it can't be.
Right. But then we didn't really trust Ben Shapiro anyway, because Vox has told us stuff about Ben Shapiro, and we're on Vox's platform, so we have to stay loyal to Vox. Except,
well, I saw what Shapiro did in the 2016 election. I was horrified.
Well, there was that, right? And I was talking to one of the students on campus, and we were sort of going through the pantheon. Or is it a pantheon? We're not even sure. Influencers, right? It's a sort of celestial, you know, cosmic effect of planetary influencers.
Bright and shiny ones.
The bright and shiny ones. You know, back in the day when I read National Review,
I had a subscription. I did. 20 years ago.
Well, I was more recent than that. You know, I read National Review daily on the online version, and, you know, got the print version and like read cover to cover for like 4 years from 2012 to 2016. I was so, you know, enraptured in that particular conversation that I went on the cruise that they had in 2015 to Alaska. That was great. Got to fly in a helicopter.
Oh, fun.
Up to a glacier and ride on the dog sled. They poop the whole way. You're fun. In dog poop. It's true.
Watch out for the brown snow.
Yes. And of course, since they're just taking you around, that this may be a metaphor for this entire stream. Since they're taking you around a particular route that they take the tourist groups on the sleds, right? It's just covered.
Mhm.
I yeah,
Oh,
it's yeah. Talk about
that's
out
a
in nature.
smell memory you don't forget.
I don't know. Watching the dogs crouch and poop as they run was memorable, right? Okay, so that was part of. I also got to see other animals like the otters and the whales and such like that. But the featured performers of this particular activity were people like Jonah Goldberg and David French and Kevin Williamson, and there were several others. Those were the big. No, those are the headliners that I remember. And Andrew
You
Clavin, I
went.
actually met Andrew Clavin was on this cruise.
All right.
So was James O'Keefe. I met him. Um, Daniel Hannan, the who had was at that point the European MP from what?
I remember
Yeah,
him.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I had been reading these guys' work for years and years and years. I can fangirl with the best of them. And then Trump got the nomination right before the cruise started, and they spent
Yeah.
the entire cruise, particularly Jonah, mocking Trump. And I'm like, I haven't really ever thought about Trump. I need to consider this. And by the end of the end of that election season, it was like National Review had come out completely against Trump, and I was like,
Yeah. Yeah. Let me give another look at this guy. Thank you for calling my attention to
well,
this.
yeah. And National Review
Yeah.
ran that whole sort of never Trump issue where they all weighed
Yeah,
in
it's
and
bizarre.
explained why we should never elect Trump, at which point I voted for him. I was like, so this I should say this must be
Yeah.
my street cred being able to think for myself, right? Because there was literally
Yeah.
nobody. I mean, I've been reading them for 4 years, like intensively. When I do something, I do it, right? I go in. And suddenly I was like, wait a minute. I mean, I'd read Jonah's Liberal Fascism. I'd read a bunch of their other books. Charlie Cook, I had read one of his books. I was well read in all of these guys' work, and suddenly I was like, not sure I buy that argument.
Well, the fact that they were all forming the way they were, and so openly anti, the nominee, where for years they had told all of their readers, go for the Republican nominee, just whoever the nominee is, because it's better than the other party, and it's the party's politics. If you agree with them, you have to vote for the nominee. Oh, except for him. No, don't be him. Forget it. No,
Yeah,
we hate him, and you should hate him too. It's
right.
like, well, who do you think you are? This is not why I read your magazine or read your magazine. The time I'd stopped it by then, but I was still shocked, even though I hadn't read it in a couple of years. I was still shocked that they were so aggressively against him.
Yeah,
It just didn't make any sense. And I didn't buy any of the attempts to say, to appeal to morality, because they still managed to say good things about Bill Clinton when he was in the White House if he did something they liked.
right.
So that was all just an act. I didn't buy it at all. So
So we got
yeah,
suspicious then. And
yeah,
then okay, and so this is the 2016. It's like this happens every 4 years. It's like magic. I wonder why. Um, I,
like a virus.
well, I mean, or the cyclical cicadas that are about to emerge, right? It's like somehow this happens every
Plague.
4 years.
Yes,
So the entire country erupts into chaos. Um, that
funny that.
yeah, funny that. Well, I mean, what had been funny is I had been, let's see, my backstory on this is like I voted for Obama in 2008 because I'm surrounded by people who did, and he seemed to be decent, right, and centrist, and be able to say things about being blue purple, um, and but I kind of without really reading anybody because I never read basically never read the newspaper and certainly didn't watch television news because I didn't. Um, by 2012, I was already kind of feeling something. It's like gut feeling, right? Rather than, and I live in the Obama neighborhood. So that was strange, right? That by 2012, I was already concerned and suspicious. But I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, just thinking it's like it had 28, 2008, 2012, 2016. Here comes 2016, and my university was making noises about, we don't have safe spaces and trigger warnings. Well, right now we have an encampment, so we're going to be tested this week for sure about
Yeah.
what we stand for. Back then, what we said was, we are the place where you can come and have the debate, and we don't put, warnings on our stuff about how you're going to be shocked in this moment, or you might need to leave the room
Yeah.
if this topic comes up, and so forth.
Yeah.
And that's when I started, paying attention to what Milo was doing with Breitbart. Read Breitbart recently? I can't even remember that it's there.
No, no, I actually, sometimes I read it by accident because I'll go to a news aggregator and they'll link to one of their stories. I'm like, oh, this went to Breitbart. But yeah, it's something I should do daily up leading up to the 2016 election.
Yeah.
And I remember I used to comment on the stories too on their site, and I stopped sometime around the summer of 2016 because it was getting weird.
How so?
The comments were getting, people seemed to, the way people were talking, I had this, like you said, it was like a gut feeling almost. But I wish I had taken notes at the time, but I didn't. I could see the way people were commenting, the way they were framing the discussion was all of it. None of it seemed organic. All of it was designed to elicit a specific emotional response.
Interesting.
Related to Trump, related to any one of the issues that were important at the day, that were related to the election, but they all seemed very. It was like I thought I was playing a game of checkers for fun, and it turns out people are playing chess. Something was going. There was like strategy going on in between the lines, and I said I can't keep up with this. It doesn't feel like an organic, natural conversation anymore, which I did enjoy doing before. And so I said, yeah, it's like, all right, I'm out. Let's just look at the casino table. Because that's what it felt like. It felt like it was playing a game. I didn't realize I was stuck in the middle of a game, and it said, "This is confusing to me. I don't really want to participate." It almost felt like I was being used.
But by comment, that's very interesting. So I mean, I read Breitbart while Milo was doing videos with them, and they were sponsoring his tour, and I read.
I did too.
His piece with Alan Bakari on the alt-right. I mean, wow. Talk about ancient history now, right?
Yeah.
And
it's not that long ago.
No, it's 8 years.
It feels like it's 100 years ago, but it's not.
Well, the whiplash on the way in which the binaries have flipped over the last 8 years. It's like, indeed, we've had it 4 years ago when we were about to have one of these cicada outbreaks. It was, the lockdowns and the vaccines and the COVID, and you was like, suddenly you're having to take sides on that. But there'd also been between 2016 and 2020 a bunch of flips and flops, and so I'd already lost, like, National Review had gone off the rails. So I'm reading Breitbart, but there's the when because of the attack on Milo, he left Breitbart, and then I basically stopped reading them.
Same, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there for Milo mostly because he was like really a good writer, a very entertaining writer. He's a fantastic interviewer.
Right.
I'd love to see him have a career out of that, because I would totally be there to watch that. But yeah, I stopped for the same reason. It's like, well, it's just, the other writers didn't interest me, so I just stopped going.
So interesting, they had to get rid of him, right?
Yeah.
Who got, and we know that Shapiro.
Yeah.
Right. That the knowing that there were, like you were saying, that we could feel, even. I mean, like I don't credit myself with that much like cool savvy. I can feel everything coming kind of things, but in retrospect, it's like there's these weird clues that you're saying, wait, something's off. Why am I feeling that something's off? And
it was like aggressive orchestration and strategy was what I was feeling, and I was on the outside of it and kind of being roped into it, and it wasn't good. It was weird. It just felt off, really off, enough for me to like close my account that I had with Discuss. I think I said, nope, don't have anything to do with it anymore.
Right, and Discuss would give you access to all sorts of other places to have conversations too. Yeah.
Yeah.
but you
Yeah,
didn't
it
feel like
did.
that anything happening. I mean, this was before
No.
we were, I mean, Twitter was obviously being botted probably already by that point, but before we were as aware of it, thanks to the COVID bots and
Hmm.
the
Oh yeah,
spending
yeah,
all this time in 2020 teasing in 2020 21 22 23 poking at Facebook for their fact checking over everything,
yeah,
so that you knew that you were being suppressed and binaried in this other direction,
yeah.
right?
Well, they can't control it. You're right. They tried to use these platforms to control people, to control the narrative, control what they were thinking. And I think maybe that was what I was feeling with Discuss
Mm-hmm.
on Breitbart in 2016. And then, of course, as you just pointed out, they were all doing it. Right. This is a great tool. Someone must have been thinking.
Right.
Wonder who for mass control through propaganda. And you can get people, as like Eastern Germany, they would get people to spy on, rat each other out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good grief, here's a platform where people are doing it for you. They're ratting themselves out. Perfect,
Yeah.
right? And after you got rid of all the people with the wrong think and the wrong ideas, then you can start reinforcing the propaganda that you wanted them to think. And the people who were left could, and then it started to get really nasty. And I do blame some politicians that I won't name right now because I don't want to give them any advertising, frankly, who basically said, get in people's faces. You need to confront them. And they even had ads saying at Thanksgiving, make sure you confront them,
Right.
right? About this issue or that issue. It was despicable. It was absolutely despicable. And I mean, maybe we can talk about this a bit later. Musk is a bit of a wild card in this. So I'm again slightly confused and skeptical, right?
Yeah.
Once bit, twice shy, right? With all this, but
Yeah, well, it's amazing that we keep trying to find someone on our team, as it were. So back in that
yeah,
in the beginning of all of this, I on my blog on Fencing Barrett Prayer, I described myself as an int, because as Treebeard says when Merry and Pippin ask him like, whose side are you on? He's like, I don't think I'm anybody's side because I'm not sure anybody's on mine. And I continue to have that feeling. It's like, well, there is good and evil here, and I'm clear about
yeah,
that, but which side is which when you're trying to decide how to trust people, and then what I've also been interested in, this is what I was talking on campus yesterday about, is like, okay, so people that some of the kids were following, I mean, certainly 8 years ago, the students following Milo, they're like graduated and have jobs and hopefully are starting families if they watched it
yeah. I
properly.
hope
They're having children. But
if they're listening to Milo, they would. That's what
well,
they should be doing. I remember
they should,
he would
right?
tell. Yeah, he would tell women, you need to quit your job and have babies, which I loved hearing.
And eight
And he
eight
was
years ago, I
sincere
mean, they
about
could be in their
that.
late 20s now, right? So,
Yeah,
um, but now, the students now, they're well, some of them are watching, like Avita said she was watching Andrew Tate and you know liked him, and so but then we've also seen, we were also sort of reflecting on, well, the fallout from the personalities that were around in 2016. I remember watching the Trigglypuff video
yeah.
when uh
It's still funny.
Steven Crowder and Milo and Christina
Tough.
Hop, yeah, she's got a middle name in there that I'm forgetting,
Hmm.
were speaking at Dartmouth, and the woman was yelling about take your hate speech off our campus. And then got videoed
Yeah.
by Cassie Dillon, who we've just seen. It's like there were all these people 8 years ago that were coming into this new media online streaming environment. I mean, including Jordan
Hmm.
Peterson, for example. And it's interesting which ones of them are either still like out there and active, and who's allied with who now.
Yeah. Right. And who was more obviously faking the public persona?
Well, we won't talk about Scott Adams because I don't think he was faking it. I think he just got sad.
I was I wasn't thinking of him. I was thinking of the group of people you just mentioned on the stage in Dartmouth.
Well, I did subscribe to the Mug Club with Crowder show for like maybe a year. Maybe 6 months. I'm not sure. And I'm not quite sure why I stopped listening. This was long before all this stuff with Jared. Like, see, we are proving that we do pay sufficient attention to know some of
Yeah.
this gossip, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I probably even know some gossip, about, Nick Fuentes, and there was one of his partners that left. Another Jared? No. There've been splits and breakups, and I'm going to
Yeah.
go appear on this other person's show to talk about how I broke up with you. I mean, it's a soap opera.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's big. Alexander Pope would have fun with it.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
Alexander Pope pre-wrote a lot of
Yeah, he
this.
wrote the script. Yeah. No, I first became aware of Steven Crowder when he was making videos with a really funny guy named Rachel Zoe, and I don't know whatever happened to him, but they made these great videos where they were basically making fun of the left, and
Right.
they were really effective at it. And I know Crowder started life as a stand-up comedian. And I think that's what Rachel Zoe was doing also. I don't know if he was doing stand up, but anyway, it was some pretty funny stuff, but they only did a little bit, and then both of them disappeared, and then Crowder has his own show.
Hmm.
And I watched the show a couple of times, and it's not anything he said on the show. I just his attitude was really just super aggressive, and sometimes I could notice he was being nasty to the other people on the show,
Hmm.
just in the way he talked to them and about them. And so when the video came out between the problems between him and his wife, I wasn't all that surprised. I mean, he's a little bit surprised, but I'd kind of seen that before. So
Yeah.
I guess why I'm thinking about this is we're talking about who can you trust. It's like, well, who's acting and who's not, right? He was clearly acting the whole time. Maybe that he started his life wanting to act, which is what stand up is,
Right.
and making very funny videos. And then he started doing political commentary. That on the stage with Dartmouth when he was confronting Trigglypuff, he was good. He did. It was, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, it was
Christine Hoff
spontaneous.
Sommers, that's her name.
Right, Hoff Summers. Oh, right. That's right. Just three
Yeah.
names, right? So yeah, when he was doing improv on the spot, and of course he was motivated by anger because the person was interrupting them.
Right.
But he's just an angry person in general. So, but I mean, he was acting the whole time. So what does he really believe? Who knows? I have no idea. But I mean, Shapiro's also acting though. He didn't start life as an actor. He started and then started writing, and that's where Vox met him, I think,
Right.
years ago. And then he came on to Breitbart, and I said, "Wow, this guy sounds great," But what he did at Harvard was great. But then he never did another thing like it. And then he just started immediately giving opinions. I mean, in hindsight, why would I think a 24-year-old should have opinions I should listen to? I mean,
Right.
I'll listen out of curiosity, but you got zero life experience. It's because he's being promoted by other people. If you find out years later, that's why. And if he's being promoted and it's all an act, then the things that the people promoting him want him to, the script they want him to say is what he's going to be saying. So it, it's I think it comes down to what Vox has been saying all along. It's like if you are promoted and you're doing well financially, and it's because somebody wants you there, calls them a ticket taker.
Hmm.
Well, maybe they're just fine with taking a ticket, or maybe they're true believers, right? But they present themselves as being objective, and they're not. That's a problem. But does anybody?
Well,
Does anybody media?
this is the huge problem of loyalty, right? It's like the feeling of, I mean, even okay, so we've all become hopefully we've all become tremendously suspicious of the easy binaries, right? Them good,
Mm-hmm.
them bad. Although we do know Christ is good and everybody else is not Christ, is on the wrong team.
Yes.
And
Yep.
it remains to demonstrate how we know that, right? It's like there are like, and we have a great guest coming up in a few weeks and it's going to help us talk through all of that, right?
Right.
It's like it's
Yeah.
Christ
Mm-hmm.
or human sacrifice. That's the easy way. But
That's
otherwise,
that's the real binary. It does
yes.
exist.
Yes, and that one really does exist. It's either, the Holy Week that the Orthodox Church is celebrating this week, or skulls on sticks. Um
Yeah.
but down from that, the feeling of, can you, I mean, it's been distressing watching a lot of these personality breakups. I mean, am I hearing something in your background or mine?
It's my
Okay, okay.
background.
No
Sorry.
worries. My house, my husband keeps going in and out the door. It's very nice outside right now, and
No,
so the
I hate open concept houses.
what? We don't have an open house. I don't know
There's
what you have.
open concept. It means you don't have separate rooms. You have very few separate rooms. It's like it's all very open, so noise travels very
You need to make
easily.
your own little cubicle. You could have your own little house cubicle.
I have an office, and it's the trendy barn door which keeps no noise out whatsoever.
And then you could be like Dilbert
So
in your own
I
little cubicle.
apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My husband will love that. I'm just gonna put some acoustic tiles up everywhere.
Anyway, no, so this is, it's like saying the problem of making teams so that you can work together on projects and can trust each other to actually work together on the projects, and watching all of
Yeah,
the media. I mean, the thing is, it's a joke about the entertainment industry. It's like, how long can the band stay together before you have, an artistic quarrel? So that feature of what's going on is interesting. But what I have noticed, and what I, remarking it as, for example, most recently, the Daily Wire break with Candace played out, is the need to, signal you're still on the team by saying one thing, and
yeah,
for the most part, I think the specific content of what people are saying about being on the teams is always less important than the fact that they're trying to signal that they're still on the team, right? And that,
yeah. That's the sub context of what's going
right.
on. Yeah, when people are talking about any topic, yeah, it's they're becoming clunkier at it. It's becoming more obvious because there's fewer and fewer voices that aren't unified in any one particular area, if that makes sense.
But then they'll whoever's pulling the strings behind all of this, Satan, but we don't know who his puppets are. Um, we do, but we don't, right?
We have a clue. Just a clue.
We have our suspicions.
Yes.
That just when you think that you've got, an alliance that's going to like stand up against one of these tests, they throw another one at us. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been interesting watching with the campus protest, right? Because those are throwing all sorts of cleavages between groups.
I don't know. I don't know whether it's not if it's just the it's, excuse me a second. Hey guys, quiet please.
We're going to start talking about you on stream live if you don't shut up.
Yes, we are. Okay.
What are they
So,
doing?
I mean,
Are they building something?
oh my gosh, it's the kitchen. It's so loud. Okay, sorry.
In my
I'm really sorry,
house, we have
guys.
a strict rule about boiling the kettle before we start the stream, because the kettle will boil for like 5 minutes, because it's a giant kettle that can fill up the giant thermos, so that the thermos is full, but you have to do
Yeah,
that before we start.
yeah. I'm thinking of Marshall McLuhan right now.
Okay.
He said the medium is the
Yeah.
message, and I'm thinking everything now to me looks like performance,
Mm.
because it's almost like reality TV. But when they keep having the same kind of emotional hysterics from the desk, and then they have blatant lies. It's a mostly peaceful protest with fire behind you. None of it looks real. I
Right.
mean, none of it looks like it just spontaneously happened, right? All of it to me looks scripted, because nobody would be dumb enough to say that with a fire blazing behind them. I mean, come on.
It could be a green screen for all we
Nobody,
know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, nobody is dumb enough to think that the crowd was chanting, "Let's go, Brandon." Nobody is that
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just they've been given a certain thing that they have to say, the thing that they have to believe, and they have to make you believe it too. And that's where the script and performance aspect of it comes in for me.
Yeah.
And so who can you trust? Nobody on a screen. I just don't trust anybody.
Do you trust me? You only know me on a screen. This is a challenge, right?
Well, yeah, except I'm not watching you like, I'm interacting with you directly. I'm not watching you talk at me one way,
Oh, but all of these
the
people
way in which
watching
the
our
broadcaster
stream
would.
are, right? How are we going to get them to trust
They
us?
are. They shouldn't. They should find out for themselves. Really, right? Any topic we talk about,
Well, that's
people
fair.
should
Yeah.
look this up for themselves.
Yeah, but I
You
mean,
know,
come on, you and I have had with our writing team, right? Long conversations about how hard it is to trust what you find, right? It's like, how indeed are we
yeah,
going to learn how to deal with this kind of chaos?
yeah, yeah.
Well, I have an idea. Here now we have evidence. We have evidence now in manuscript, handwritten. Um, that I was talking to you a few weeks ago when we were first looking at this, and I think it's just like this problem that they have in the 11th century, which we call feudalism.
Right.
I think I put the slides in the wrong order. So right,
Okay.
everybody, if you think about what feudalism is, I'll go to the not that slide, ignore the map, this one, right, where it is funny to me as a medievalist, because there's, studying medieval history means you have nothing but people with fantasy versions of what you work on. And you're desperately trying to explain to them that that fantasy version that they have and they may actually like about the Middle Ages, knights, hooray, Deus Vult.
Oh, yeah, that's the good part.
Well, it's always more complicated, and it's like, so I have this juggling, right? Is I don't want to I want to convince you the Middle Ages are all corrupt and terrible, but on the other hand, I can't in good conscience tell you that it's like, even with this feudalism, right? It's like, I often show this slide in class. I'm like, what have you heard about feudalism? So it's a clear pyramid, right? Hierarchy. We want
Yeah.
hierarchy, maybe even social hierarchy.
Right. Yeah. So this level owes, fealty to this level, which owes fealty to this level, and up until you get to the king and then the pope, right?
Oh, well, they're in
And
competition
then
between
God.
the emperor and the pope, right? It's like, fighting it out, battling it
Yeah.
out between Henry IV and Gregory VII. Henry, no, like, see, it's like the problem with studying history is, one, it's pretty much as complicated as keeping track of all those personalities we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And actually, at some level, being able to say, yeah, so and so's married to so and so, and because he married her, her brother gave him a business, and because they're in business together, they're actually controlling that company, right? And
Sounds familiar.
right, and I mean, to be able to, one, to just to understand that you have to be able to do it at that level to know what was going on, and yet, people still want to, I mean, they still a lot of people idealize this sense of, yeah, back in the day, someday, which is always in the midst of time, right? There were clear structures. There's a king, he's got his barons, they've got their vassals, they've got their peasants. Well, it's true about the peasants.
Right.
The bottom.
Yeah.
But the
We still are.
yeah. Well, you're only actually a peasant if you're tilling the land. So, show your chickens to count as a peasant.
Yeah.
That we still wish that there were some way that there were clear structures of, authority and loyalty, and if only it were back in the golden days, back in the dark ages. Wait, which?
Which country?
Well, okay, so, sorry guys. So back in the day, here's a map of France from 987, which is pretty much the right period because the one of the characters that we're going to talk about was born in 969, so he's 20 years old at the point this map is made. Find France on this map. Let's see, there's an orange bit that says Duchy Aquitaine. That's the biggest bit. Wait, that's not France. There's the Duchy de Gascogne. That's fairly big. That's not France. County du Maine. That's not France. Count d'Anjou. That's not France. Duché de Bretagne. That's not France. Duchy de Normandy. That's not France. I'm not sure there's France on this map.
There might be Franks.
Oh, it's
right?
actually,
Somewhere.
no, there is actually France. It's the little blue bit.
Okay.
the teeny.
It's expanded.
Okay, and it's surrounded by the county of Champagne and all these other. It's like, but those of you watching at home who can see the map, that Casey can't. Paris is in the center of a light blue blotch. That's France.
And I think the Parisians of today would agree. They are France.
Well, yeah, and as far as the Parisians of today are concerned, that's the rest of it doesn't matter at all, right? It's like, what? There's something outside the city. But
yeah.
But in 987, which is significant because that's when the Capetian line begins, right? The great, monarchical line that carries on until 1789 or thereabouts. I mean, I get the Bourbons come in there and somewhere in the middle. The Capetians. Well, don't worry about that. The what we think of as the Kingdom of France, the actual King of France holds on to that little bitty blue part in 987, and everybody else around him. Well, okay, so who in our modern media world do we think is the equivalent of the king right now? Well, maybe Ben Shapiro wishes he were. Is there a king? Is there a king anymore? I mean, so like Steve Bannon when he was at Breitbart, but then he left. So no. Do we have a king? Is there even someone who like with the gravitas or the figurehead or the lineage or the money? I mean,
I think there's plenty of people who'd like to think they are.
Indeed.
But they're not acknowledged by anybody else outside of their small little groups that they control.
That's a problem. I know Vox is king. And we're unauthorized, and there's this little blue blotch that's king.
He's the Dark Lord. He's not the king.
Well, that counts. The father of the guy, Hugh Capet, his name is Hugh the Great, right? Duke of the Franks. So he's the pre-king is not called king, but he has enough influence and power to be able to get a hold of some relics of the Passion and give them to the King of England, whose sister he's hoping to marry. It's all very complicated, right? But yeah,
it's like the strangest dating gift ever.
It's a piece of the lance, and so I think that part of the sponge. Come on, these are cool gifts. And he did get to marry her, by the way. I think she died.
Very cool.
He married somebody else again.
That happened a lot, didn't it?
Yes, well, but so I mean, even if we might want Vox to be king, and he might actually have maybe that's Owen. I mean, he has that knit cap, right, where he gets to be king. So there's some this is actually accurate. It's saying there's someone who has a degree of respect. Maybe some people outside of his particular platform recognize him, but there's a whole bunch of other guys out there with a lot more money, and particularly the Duke of Aquitaine, right, who has this giant orange blotch in the south, and therefore control of much more income, property, manpower, loyalties than the actual technical king. Who is that? Do we think? I mean, the Duchy of Aquitaine stays fairly powerful for a long time, so it needs to be moderately stable. Maybe we should ask the chat. Who do you think should be the Duke of Aquitaine? Oh, we don't have. Unfortunately, our particular platform is still dropping people. It looks like so they maybe they went all over to Telegram. Guys on Telegram, platformation. Okay, we get Kilts is watching and screen capping. We want votes for who gets to be the Duke of Aquitaine. But that it's very much like, interestingly, our modern media situation, where in the old days, in the fantasy version of everything, there was a kingdom, and maybe there was like ABC and NBC and CBS. So there's France, Germany, and England, and it's like clear, right? They had commanded big swaths of attention and loyalties, and had Walter Cronkite and Barbara Walters and stuff like that. I mean, those, it's like you can name them. It's like they're clear royalty or nobility.
I think the Murdoch family probably comes closest to what you're describing, because he has a real media empire across several continents, and his sons are taking over different parts of it as he is pretty old. He just got married again. He was, Jerry Hall is no more. This is Rupert Murdoch, but I think, I haven't seen it, but there's a show called Succession that's based upon them.
I've seen ads for them on the buses from the bus around here. Yeah. And so I think Murdoch, he's dispersed enough. I think he's more like the Emperor in Constantinople. With like so the emperors in Constantinople at this time in the 10th century, there's one called the Bulgar Slayer. Now I forgot what his first name is. I've forgotten. The emperors in Constantinople have been reasserting their authority over various properties like Crete, and they're also really good at making alliances with the neighboring kingdoms. And the Ottonian emperors in the 10th century have, in 955, defeated the Magyars at the Battle of Lechfeld, and they're starting to assert themselves. So there's more going on. It's maybe I was thinking of France as just sort of our little conservative media bubble insofar as it exists, but there are other like spheres outside of this one that we can let those the others take charge of. I mean,
well, that's the interesting thing about Rupert Murdoch, is that he started Fox News because it was a good business decision. He didn't agree with any of the politics, because his sons still are very, very left leaning, but he saw money to be made. He saw an untapped market, and he held on to that for like 30 years before they started doing whatever it is they're doing now.
Okay, so he gets to be William of Aquitaine. That actually works. Because I mean, you think about it. So again, everybody's won. The demonstration of this exercise is to say nothing's new under the sun. And what I find, I mean, it's interesting how we've gone from having, I guess, the Roman Empire in some sense, right? There's actual central authority and central communication, and it's fragmented in all of these little pieces. And what's fascinating about France, particularly France in the 10th and early 11th centuries, is the way in which nobody could trust anybody else, right? This is you could say this is the peak of feudalism, but the point of the peak of feudalism is there's no king that can actually control most of these guys. William of Aquitaine, it's always William because they keep naming themselves William. So this one's the fifth that we're going to be talking about. He has the ability to control some of this territory, but it's all very personal loyalties, just like what we're seeing play out in the media. And what's delightful about all this is we have an actual document describing his relationships with one of his minor vassals, and I've just entertained it, like how topical it all seems. So shall we take them through a little bit of this? So here's the manuscript. We have this one copy. It's a very famous thing called the Conventum, or the agreement between Count William V of Aquitaine and Hugh IV of Lusignan. So I could read the whole thing, right? Just like talk about drama and narrative. I think it's too long to read out. Yeah, this is way too long to read. Okay, so
I don't want to give spoilers. I'll just give one. I feel sorry for Hugh. Anyway, go on.
You should, because every single time he tries to make a agreement with William, what happens?
It gets
It
broken
gets broken, right?
every single
So when
time.
I say
Not
something's
just once, not
positively
just twice,
medieval,
not just three
I mean
times.
it, right? So here we go. The Count of Aquitaine, called William, had an agreement with Hugh the Chiliarch that when the end should come, it's when he dies, for the Viscount Bozo, the Count would give Bozo's honor to Hugh in commendation. So William would give Hugh the property that Bozo had held, and Hugh would do vassalage, homage for it, right? Bishop Rojo saw and heard and kissed the Count's arm. So there's a witness. Saverick, the Viscount, took away from Hugh the land which Hugh held from Count William, and on the Viscount's death, the Count, that's William, promised Hugh that he would enact no agreement with or settlement with Saverick's brother, Ralph, until the land was released. So this happens a lot, that somebody dies, Hugh thinks he's going to get the castle. The sad and pathetic thing is that these castles are all about as substantial as the encampments on the student camp on the campuses right now. They're wood.
Oh, there's okay.
Yeah, they're Motte and Bailey's for the most part, and they get.
But the important thing was to put some structure on there so you could claim it. So you can claim the land that went around it.
They're like forts. Yeah, I mean we call them castles, but they're actually much more like they're wooden forts on hills. Right. And so every time someone dies, Hugh thinks, great, I'm going to get my land and I'm going to, be able to control this land. And then William gives it to somebody else. Okay. So this first one, Saverick's brother, Ralph, claims the land, even though William had said that he'd give it to Hugh. Hugh made an agreement with Ralph, the Viscount, to marry Ralph's daughter in consideration of that estate or a greater estate or something else. Like he'll take anything, right? But just, I'll marry your daughter, please. Like, give me something. When the Count heard this, the Count throughout all of this is William. Okay. When the Count heard this, he was very angry and hastened to Hugh in humility and said to him, don't marry Ralph's daughter. I'll give you whatever you ask of me, and you'll be my friend before everyone else except my son. Hugh did what the Count ordered, and out of love of the Count and fidelity to him, he privately cast the woman off. And it's interesting how many times in this document they talk about how it's for love, right? It's like Hugh loves William as his lord, and therefore he does whatever William asks him. Except for it never works, right? At that time, it happened that Jocelyn, the fortress of Parthenay, met his end. And the Count said that he would hand over Jocelyn's honor and widow to Hugh. If Hugh refused to take them, the Count would put no trust in him. So he says, you have to marry this woman, not the other one that you wanted to. Right? The women don't get a say in any of this.
Yeah, they're chattel.
Well, they're it's not so much that they're chattel, they're like castles. You trade them. And
property, yeah.
I mean,
you're an asset.
Yeah, they're better than serfs, right? Serfs have to. I mean, did you notice that later on throughout all of this, at one point, William's saying, "I'll prove to you that I love you. I'll have a serf undergo the ordeal for you." It's like, what? I'm gonna torture my tech guy to prove that I actually want you working on my show, and you're just like, what?
I mean, it's so funny. It's like Monty Python. You know where they get their ideas from. When they do absurd things like this, or Blackadder, these things actually happen. You can just see Baldric getting beaten by Blackadder. See how much I love you.
Yes, it's exactly like that. I'll beat Baldric so that And the thing is, all the guys that write that, the Monty Python guys were really well educated, frankly. And Terry Jones did a nice book on medieval life. I think he did a script for a television series, and one time he was at the medieval conference in Kalamazoo. So they're exactly right. The level of, but consider, I mean, think how people are behaving now. It's so interesting. It's like, it's literally exactly like this level of, well, you do what I say if we make this bargain, and then I'll make this agreement, and here I have this witness, and then, oh no, I'm not doing it at all.
Yeah.
Hugh did not make, if Hugh refused to take them, the Count would put no trust in him. Hugh did not make any suggestion or request to the Count about this either for himself or for anyone else. So after due consideration, he said to the Count, I shall do all that you command me. The Count, while holding a court assembly with Count Fulk, this is Fulk of Anjou, and Fulk of Anjou is actually interesting because he actually built stone castles. So there's also the sort of tech problem, right? They're moving from wood to stone, and can they make networks of castles in these regions? We'll go back to the map, right? That they need to make, they need enough of these little towers to control the land around them. And Fulk of Anjou very, cunningly, even though he's in the dark green bit above the pink bit of Aquitaine, or the orangey bit of Aquitaine, he's trying to fortify his own territory so that William of Aquitaine can't take it over. Right. So Count Fulk promised to give Fulk benefices from his own property. Fulk promised that he would give Hugh what belonged to him. The Count sent for Viscount Ralph and said to him about this agreement, Hugh won't keep the agreement which he has with you because I forbid it. But Fulk and I have an agreement to give him Jocelyn's honor and wife. We shall act to your undoing because you are not faithful to me. And on and on and on it goes. Right? And the thing is, it's exchange after exchange after exchange. They take a castle, they burn it. Hugh says to William, will you, I'm your man. I do what you ask. Then William says, so what?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, why? Why do you keep? I mean, was he required to remain loyal to him?
Well, okay, this is why I think it's socially fascinating. It's like, how do you control people who can't make bargains, who can't actually come to some kind of fidelity with each other? And in our situation, it's all of these, NDAs, I made an NDA with you and I'm not going to talk about what you said to me when you were insulting me. But now, you didn't hold up to your bargain. So I'm going to, tell people what you said. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Or non-compete clauses.
The non-compete clauses. There's a lot of non-compete in here. If I'm going to burn down his castle, but you're not allowed. Oh, there's this one very interesting exchange where Hugh has promised fealty both to Fulk and to William, so both in Anjou and in Aquitaine, but it's unclear like who. Aquitaine is obviously more powerful, but Fulk is actually building better fortresses, right? So not long afterwards, Hugh went to the fortress at Gincay and burned it down. So it's one of the wood ones, and captured men and women and carried off everything. Coming to the Count, he said to him, "My lord, give me permission to rebuild the fortress which I have burnt." Okay, so he's burned down the fortress, and now he's going to William and saying, "Can I rebuild it? Why did you burn it down in the first place?" But anyway. And the Count said to him, "You are Fulk's man," so of Anjou, not Aquitaine. "How can you rebuild the fortress? He will demand it from you, and you will be incapable of withholding it from him." Hugh said, "My lord, when I was Fulk's man, I told him that his men had seized from me what was my right, and if I were capable of taking it back from them, I would do so. But I would hold just as much my fidelity to him, which is what I wish to do. And Fulk said to me, 'Whatever you take from them, don't take it from me.' When the Count heard what kind of agreement Fulk and Hugh had made, he was pleased, and the Count said to Hugh, 'Build the fortress on those terms, and if I can manage to redeem it from Count Fulk with my money and yours, it will be part mine and part yours.' And Hugh built the fortress, and Fulk demanded it from the Count." It's exactly like, it's like, I'm going to build this platform to, do live streams on or something like that. But you can't make that agreement because I was on the platform with you over there. But if you actually make the agreement to, let him seize it when I build it, then I'll do it with you. We're in the Middle Ages.
Yeah. Oh, we never left them. Right.
Okay, so but this is actually what's challenging, right? Because do we want this to persist? This I mean, literally like complete local, burn the castle, make another agreement with Hugh. I can marry her. No, you can't. I can make this agreement. There's no central. This is when people imagine what a king can do. There's no central authority to oversee any of these agreements except for the bishops. But then there's conflicting episcopal authority too, right? So at one point it's the Bishop of Limoges that Hugh goes to, and in another it's another, and every so often they try things like after the serf was going to undergo the ordeal, and he's trying to figure out, Hugh is still trying to figure out whether William will be faithful to him. When Hugh heard the Count talking this way, he said, "You are my lord. I shall not take a guarantee from you." The serf doesn't have to undergird the ordeal. But put myself only in the mercy of the Lord and in your service. The count said to Hugh, give up all the plaints you have brought against me in the past. Swear fealty to me and my son, and I shall give you your uncle's honor or something in exchange of equal value to you. And Hugh said, my lord, I pray you by God and this holy cross, which is made in the image of Christ, that if you and your son in future wish to threaten me, you will not have done it to me in an underhand fashion. What?
Okay, you can threaten me, but not in an underhanded way.
But do it openly on the, I swear on our Lord, right? And you're just like,
he's begging, just stop lying. That's what he's doing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And that's why we have this document, right? It's like it's from William's, or so from Hugh's territory, from Lusignan. And he's desperately trying to say, like, is there any way we can make some agreement that you don't lie about whether you're going to help me keep my family property or not?
Yeah. I feel sorry for Hugh.
Well, this is what we're realizing. So here we may have this idealized version of feudalism, realizing the idealized version suggests that there's like some central authority to which you can appeal, and the king will like take care of you. I mean, that's what when people imagine. So think about that when the French 1,000 years later decide to chop their king's head off, they've thrown themselves back onto the situation where there's no recognized central authority, nobody that anybody can trust.
Well, that's the committee, right? The committee is going to be the authority, and the committee is made up of people who do things like chop king's heads off.
Interestingly.
And throw little boys in prison, little 9-year-old princes in prison to die. So, was it better?
Well, how they imagine social media would function. We have, the School of Athens with Plato and Aristotle having the Raphael's painting of them, and great philosophical debate. And in fact, how social media functions, it's this battle.
Right. That's the committee.
Okay, so we're joking about it, but this is actually, now we've gotten to the point in the show where we go sober and terrified. It means, how are we going to constitute any kind of government? Because government is supposed to be the governing, right? It's supposed to be the direction that the community takes. And instead, we're in the situation where, we're back in, feudal France, pre the rise of the centralized monarchy, when the strongest guy gets to take whatever he wants, and everybody else is desperately trying to make bargains with him.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're there. You mentioned a couple of weeks back, G.K. Chesterton remarked on his trip to New York around 1900 that the Americans elect their king.
Right.
And that makes perfect sense to me, right? Because you can get a bad president like you can get a bad king. You can see Congress still degenerates into the fighting scene in the meme occasionally. I think British Parliament probably does it more often. Maybe not fisticuffs, but it's one person with a strong personality trying to exert influence by force if necessary on the members of his party, and then they group together and then they fight. It's feudal. It's feudal France all over again. Everybody's trying to make agreements with each other and breaking the agreements and lying about making and breaking the agreements, and
right.
And then the president's got power, but it's not absolute any more than the king's was.
And this is an enormous mystery. I think it's, I suppose there's a blessing in all of this, because I never really understood the problem of sovereignty. So let me say, it's like, we're told that, we need to save our democracy, right? Except for the democracy is behaving like the feudal, arrangements,
right.
and the wheeling and dealing of alliances and bargains and bribery.
Well, that very phrase, especially when Nancy Pelosi wields it like a bat, our democracy, right, means it's mine, not yours, not those people over there.
Right.
Right.
She has a serf undergo the ordeal to prove it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
we call those students on campus who are being forced through the ordeal so that the grown-ups can play bargains. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're pawns. They're pawns in their chess game, and it's despicable.
But you know the problem is here we have another map. This is one of my favorite maps. It's XKCD map of online communities from 2010. Right? It's like
Yeah.
what was the landscape like back then? Well, Facebook was the largest, and we have
Hmm.
Farmville and Happy Farm, the island of YouTube, the island of Twitter, the island of Skype. I'm not sure Telegram's on here.
It's not.
We recognize King Pavel on this stream, right? Because
We do.
he is the only owner of Telegram. So
Yeah, that's
basically
pretty
he's our
awesome.
king.
Yeah, Caesar King, all hail Pavel.
Well, certainly us here on Telegram, right?
Yeah.
Um and this I do find this fascinating that in the digital world we have ended up with this, you know, conglomeration of different sized polities with different manners and customs. Kiltz and I talked about that last year, right? All the e-duchies that we've been
Hmm.
developing,
Yeah.
and the problem in the digital world is similar to what we've just shown you happening in 10th century France of how do you create functioning communities? Because the point about the Duke of Aquitaine is he's the strongest guy in 987 till he dies in that particular William dies in 1030, and then the next William comes along. All Dukes of Aquitaine are named William, so he's like eternal. He's the eternal
The
count.
Eternal William.
Yes.
Sounds like Dracula.
Well, it's like how do you make it seem like your family has always been in charge? Just keep the name.
Just keep naming him William, right? And that's the next king of England as well.
That's a different William. That comes from the William the Conqueror who killed, well, no, that's a different topic. But it's still this. It we're in perilous times right now because we don't know how to create a functioning central government that is trustworthy, is the mediator between all of these local arrangements. And that is, in fact, the king's law is supposed to do that, right? That if you have the law, which is why we have, you know, our sacredest space where the law is made in Congress and such, that
Mm.
it's meant to be, you know, for all, right? That it's there's no privilege, there's no private exceptions to the laws, which is we have nothing but that, right? We're just riddled with privilege, and we're basically back. I don't know where we are back. We're in our own new world of privilege and fractionalism and no king.
Yeah, it doesn't look very different, does it, the landscape?
We don't know what the answer is here on the Mosaic Arc. We're going to keep sailing around. I mean, what is the answer? We couldn't even figure out in our you know jokey little way figuring out who is in fact even in the situation of being king of France.
Well, I mean, people like to say decentralization, but look at that medieval map of France. That's what decentralization looks like.
Indeed.
Yeah.
It's you have, well, but on the other hand, you know, large scale imperial structures are easily, you know, they fall into corruption.
Right. Well, they're no better because people just form unofficial alliances, you know, behind the scenes. There's still machinations going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's machinations within machinations. You know, I've blessedly never worked in the halls of Congress in any capacity. I can imagine though, if you did, there would be groups within groups within groups, and they're all strategizing together.
Well, I mean, that's so our next image is one of these lovely spring graphs. Did you ever, were you on Facebook early enough when there was
I've never had a Facebook account.
Oh, you've never inhabited Facebook land.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
There was for a little bit an app that would take all of your friends and show how they were related to each other. These
Oh
wonderful,
yeah, that was a cool graphic.
yeah, these wonderful spring graphs where you can say, okay, I have this set of friends here and this set of friends here and this set of friends here. And you know, mine, I remember my sisters were quite tightly clumped into a few things, and mine were like one group here, one group here, one group didn't know each other at all, which then turned into the problem that Facebook had of suddenly all of those are together in the same room, and you're like, wait, what? It's like the worst wedding ever,
Oh,
right? Because all
oh.
of all of your
That's a really
subgroups
good description.
meet, and you didn't think that through
Yeah,
when you sent out all the invitations.
yeah, yeah. It literally went out to everybody. You didn't want it to.
Right. So we say that, it's like simply inviting everybody in may not be the answer to the political problem.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
really you realize we're on the meta level now of political theory, right?
Yeah,
we
I
we
do. I
have to
think,
now solve the world's problems, just the two of us, because we're
okay,
the
why not?
queens. No, look, we're gonna figure this out and then go out into the world and tell everybody what, right? Like, and it is an interesting problem, right? Because you said, okay, you're talking about Elon Musk, right? Where do we put Elon Musk in this narrative?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet because, I mean, he spent a whole lot of money to buy Twitter for the ability to have freedom to do what he wanted with it, but he doesn't really have any freedom. So he still does for now, but you've got insane politicians down under calling for his immediate jail because he's so irresponsible.
Mm.
I mean,
Well, Durov,
you've got
our king had to go to the Emirates and live in Dubai to be able to be free like that in his
yeah, I
physical
have,
world.
yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that interview with Tucker yet. I should watch that. But I guess he got mugged in California,
Yes, right outside.
which,
I mean, he'd gone and like had a meeting at Twitter, and he was tweeting about it, and he got mugged.
yeah, that is crazy. I mean, somebody with that much personal wealth, and you'd think they could, I'm sure he does now, hire security.
Maybe, but
But you don't want to have to live like
he
that.
said he doesn't have anything else, right? He's not really into the life of having yachts and houses and such, because I mean, he likes working on the app on Telegram, and we
Mhm.
can verify that we have cool stickers thanks to King Pavel, and that King
Me too.
Pavel actually in his own messages to the people is pretty whimsical with his sticker. The little cartoon emojis, right? That they're always
Yeah,
decorating all of them, and now I'm like, it's his, so they're his, so he likes his stickers.
yeah, it's very cute.
It's very cute. So we're in, but the thing is, he it's that's one version of government, right? Which is saying, the people get to behave the way they like in their chats and in their channels, and he gives us beautiful stickers and such, and he's not that interested. I do actually have the premium subscription, so I have some other little features, but it also seemed appropriate to give some support back, because we have this cool platform to engage
Yeah,
on. um
yeah.
it like all of the social media is very interesting uh experiments in government.
It is. I suppose it is. Telegram seems pretty free, and Pavel is sends out messages at least once a month, talking about different things he's doing with the platform, but also talking about requests they've gotten for information or requests to remove information. And he's like, nope. And I can't yet figure out how he's immune to all of that. Right?
It's
I can
because
kind
he
of
lives
figure
in
out how.
Dubai.
Uh, you know, there are tentacles everywhere. I understand why Musk is hampered somewhat because he works and receives a lot of government contracts and for his space programs and his electric vehicle programs, right? Because
Right.
unfortunately, I don't think anybody's working on the Hyperloop anymore, which is unfortunate because that was a really cool idea. But if he wants to keep doing what he's doing in other areas, he's somewhat dependent on government contracts, so he has to deal with them. He has to deal with the congressional critters, and the lobbyists, who are
Right.
constantly trying to continue using the platform they so richly enjoyed for years before when they were controlling everybody's speech.
Hmm.
and he doesn't want to let them do that anymore. And they're not having any of it, so they're bringing some pressure on him that way. And in that way, I guess he kind of is like a king, trying to keep all of the dukes in line so they don't challenge him for power.
Yes, Musk has more of the situation that the King of France did, sort of. Although he does actually own the whole. Well, no, I don't think he does own. Maybe it's Musk. Maybe Musk is the King of France with no power.
Well,
he's got
power,
the title, but you
yeah,
got the Duke of
checked.
Aquitaine over there still,
Yeah.
being able to control some of what you're doing, and you have
I
the
think
idea of what the king should be able to guarantee.
Yeah, I think what he's got is the support of the people, which is what a king needs to keep his crown,
Right.
and not necessarily the dukes, but he's got the support of the people because he's letting them use the platform, right? I love it's a Chuck Dixon's tagline on this Twitter. It's really funny. He says, "I'm going to be a lot more active here now that the hall monitors are gone." And I thought it was just a perfect way of saying it. I think the hall monitors are still there somewhat, but nothing like it was 2 years ago before he bought it.
Right.
Yeah. But that's all people want. People want the hall monitors gone.
But there's always, it seems like this feudal desire that powerful people have to, take wealth from the peasants doesn't go away. And so we found graphics to illustrate all this. This one, I was looking for hierarchies of I don't know what, right? And I found this is Maslow's hierarchy of digital needs, which is taking. I don't know what I think about Maslow's hierarchy. It's famous in psychology. If like you need to satisfy your physical needs, and it goes on up to the spiritual. And I'm not sure that But anyway, on the bottom we have the physiological needs, which I guess are the hardware, right? So. And the bandwidth. And then safety needs. I don't know why Amazon is included in there. Skype, Netflix, online games.
Yeah, I don't understand how is Netflix safety?
love and belonging. That's all the social media, right?
Yeah, that made sense.
Psychological needs. I guess. I see. It's the basic needs, and so Amazon and. It's funny that they put Netflix in basic needs, right? Or basic needs for storytelling, whereas Amazon is basic needs for books. That I'll give you. And
is it just books they're referring to, or lots of junk?
But you can buy other stuff on Amazon.
Surprise!
Why would you buy anything other than books? I haven't bought new clothes in ages.
Why would you? Yeah. Why would you do that?
Okay, so that's sort of shopping stuff, I think. But it's interesting that they put Bing and Skype and Netflix in there. Love and belonging are all the social media, right? So I guess Instagram and chats and what's the little critter with the thingy on its head? I don't remember what that is. Is that TikTok?
Oh gosh, I remember what that is. I think that might be TikTok, actually. Yeah, I think you're right.
And then esteem needs, which are above love and belonging, which apparently include followers.
Selfies.
They're followers. Oh, they're the thumbs up, right? They're the attention that you need.
The the likes.
You can't just live on likes? Why do we need to?
Man does not live on likes alone. Alas, you need Amazon to buy food too. DoorDash, it needs to be on there. Yeah,
maybe. I think this is from a while ago. And then the joke in the pyramid though is the top is the off button. It's like turn all of this off and ascend.
You need that,
right?
Yeah.
We can't live without being in the earth. And that that's the feudal situation is interesting because there's all these castles that they keep burning down and trying to control territory. Controlling digital turf is not the same. I think it's all up there with the likes, right? It's and yet there is a physical reality to, well, we say Durov has to live in Dubai because of the laws, because somewhere you're grounded and you've got this physical reality that is under somebody's territorial laws.
Yeah. Hmm. So the territorial laws are all intellectual, though, right? These are freedoms and crimes, right?
Mm,
So I think that's the similarity between the actual Earth. I mean, there are laws that you have to adhere to, and there are some freedoms that you have, but it's your freedom isn't total. Yes. And like you said, he lives in Dubai, so that his can be,
right.
so that
But
he's
we
not.
end up with the next one where it's like we're trying to put an argument here together because we're sure it all fits. This
I'll make it fit.
because we're poets, right? And it's all going to rhyme.
That's right. We're going to torture that context.
Why not? Everybody tortures the Middle Ages all the time for metaphors. We're going to do it properly, right? If you're going to talk about feudalism and you're going to talk about something being medieval, this is what it means.
Yeah.
Which is, this is indeed the problem. Overlapping legal structures, problems of loyalty and trust, problems of fidelity, and both familial bargains and landed arguments. I mean, what I was thinking when you were just saying there now, it's like we have to live on the land somewhere, but there are spiritual realities, which is where most of the news stuff lives, right? Although
Yeah.
there were people marching around in the neighborhood, not just on campus today, making protests about indeed things that are happening in the physical world.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're hoping to get in the digital world so everybody else sees them farther than their neighborhood or their campus.
We're about to like have a moment here where it all comes together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because the other thing that people love, mocking about the Middle Ages is that it's so, age of faith, right? And that
Yeah.
most of what they were, it's like when Hugh's saying, I said I'd love you on the image of the cross, on the holy cross made in the image of Christ. I pray you not betray me. That the reality for even these guys that are fighting over forts is something spiritual.
So the reality of they're fighting over forts is something spiritual. What was spiritual about that?
No, the reality is something spiritual, even though what they spend their lives doing is fighting over forts.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Okay.
And we are back in this now. What I have showing is this. I remember this diagram of the trusted news sources.
I can't hear that without laughing anymore. Even just a little bit.
Well, this is where we started, right? In this conversation, saying, who do you trust anymore, right? Well, how is Hugh going to get to figure out who he can trust? William says, you can trust me because I'll torture the serf.
Poor Baldric. Leave him alone.
Yeah, I like
so.
this. Let's go to CNN and say, how are we going to trust you? And they'll say, we'll torture, one of our workers for you.
Yeah, we'll torture Brian Stetler for you.
And then you can trust. But no, it's like the serf was just meant to undergo the ordeal. So you cannot doubt, but the settlement we have made between ourselves should be firm and good, right? They have no other way of proving that they're going to behave as they say without.
They have a way. He could have transferred property to him right there.
Now, why would he do that? Right? I'm going to torture this. I'm going to have this. So the serf, I guess he's going to undergo the ordeal, and then that will prove whether William's lying or not, whether the serf survives the ordeal.
How does that work? Hey, I'll torture this guy right here. Then you'll believe me, right?
Yes.
See how serious I am? Look at how much pain I put him through. It's just laughable. I mean, it's sad. I feel sorry for the serfs. I feel sorry for Baldric. I do.
This is the world we still live in, right? It's like we may have all this great tech and everything, but we are spiritually in exactly the same place as these guys were. How do we know how to trust anybody? And so these trusted news sources, these are hilarious now, right? So the middle rank is mainstream, minimum partisan bias, right? Yeah. So one of them's on William of Aquitaine's side, and one of them's on Fulk of Anjou's side. And you, Hugh, have to figure out which one you're going to trust. Well, these are the guys in the middle. NPR.
The middle?
In the middle.
Yeah, okay.
The BBC. This is I'm constantly reminded by in Bloom County, the cartoon with Milo the reporter and Opus the penguin and everything.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones was they're in the meadow, which is where they have their little confabs, and they're playing at being comedy stand up routines, and Milo says, I think it's Milo who does this. He's saying, look, an airline schedule.
Oh, yeah.
That's from the 80s. Yeah, I mean, it would work
Yeah.
now. Look, an airline
Could be
schedule.
today. Yeah. Yeah.
Look, a mainstream media in the center, right? So the Washington
Right.
Post, the New York Times, we know where the center is, right? I guess
Yeah.
ABC, NBC, Reuters, AP. That's the dead center, right? Okay, and then we have also that's meets high standards. Oh,
Except by who?
okay, so it's there were two axes: one liberal, partisan, liberal and conservative, right? Which were back in like 2016, we're still the polls, and then sensational clickbait, basic AF, basic as okay.
Yeah. Fudge.
Okay. Meets high standards, analytical, complex. Okay, so the gray one in the middle is sort of meets high standards, but it's not that complex. And then complex, but in the middle is the Wall Street Journal, Wall Street Journal Economist. The Hill is a little bit conservative, but still mainly in the middle. Skews conservative, but still reputable. Skews liberal, but still reputable. The Atlantic, The Guardian, Slate, and Vox. Not our Vox, the other Vox.
Right.
I never thought Vox was that analytical. Well, anyway.
I didn't think so either. That was more sensational.
And then we have below them, but still in the middle, USA Today and CNN. Better than not reading news at all.
It's not. It's so not. Oh gosh. Yeah. I think USA Today used to be just a really easy to read, nothing mentally challenging type of paper, and then it went way left wing a couple of years ago because I think they probably just saw there was money in it.
Yeah.
I don't know why they thought that, but I mean, it was the same motivation as Rupert Murdoch saying, "Hey, let's go to the right."
Well, here he's got Fox News.
Yeah.
Good for confirming your existing opinions, but bad for convincing others. Be careful how much you hang out here. In the Fox News orbit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the side, sensational clickbait down at the bottom, conservative, Breitbart, Daily Caller, Blaze, Red State, Infowars, and it says just no.
Just no, yeah.
I mean,
that's all that needs to be said.
They want you to read in the middle of this. So,
yeah.
But I mean, Hugh, it's like, are you going to go for William or are you going to go for Folk? Frankly, it feels to me like that. It's like the what we've said, like the quote ideological polls. We started with talking about how National Review we thought was on one pole of this discussion, but when Trump came into candidacy, swung, like, no, we're not going to be allied with you. We're going to give the castle to somebody else.
I had to say, before they did that, they had some author who became infamous for creating the expression "to learn to code," and it was a hate screed against, white Americans from West Virginia and people that would work in traditional coal mining and industries like that, or blue collar industries. And he's like, I don't care if you're out of work, you're all lazy anyway, just learn to code. It was that kind of attitude. It was so disgusting. And was he forced to leave, or no, he left?
That was Kevin Williamson. Did he say the learn to code thing?
Job.
So I met him on the cruise, and I was, entertained. I enjoyed his writing for a long time. He came from the same part of Texas as I do, right? He came from Lubbock, which is south of where my mom lives. And was, staunchly anti-abortion because he wasn't killed by his mother, and who he was born in. So it's like he had a good, like, uplifting story in the sense of not coming from the coasts, not coming from one or the other pole, right?
where did the contempt come from? Because the article was contemptuous, and that was so off-putting. It was so contemptuous. It was off-putting. I'm like, I'm not reading this anymore. I can't believe you didn't fire this guy. I'm kind of ticked off that you didn't, because that's nasty. And by the way, why did you even publish it? It's gross. He took a job somewhere else and almost immediately got fired from that job. And at which point the world laughed at him and said, "Learn to code."
Yeah, I think
So
he's got
he
somewhere
deserved
else
it.
now. I think I've seen one of his bylines recently, but I haven't followed. Yeah, so they fell
Yeah.
off their
So
own graph.
yeah, before Trump, they were already doing stuff like that. They were already publishing things that would push people like me away
Right,
from
torturing the
reading them.
serfs.
Yeah.
I mean, that does seem to me like the default in the Middle Ages is there's the land, the guys that can claim. I mean, and Hugh was no good guy, right? He I think when he captures one fortress, he has people's hands cut off.
Wow.
Yeah. Let me see, where was that? So yeah, not to say that we're. No, I forgot where that happened. Yes, here we go. So don't think that Hugh is the good guy in any of this, right? He's just like swinging between Fulk and William. When Ralph died,
Yeah.
Hugh asked the Count to give up to him the land which Ralph had taken away from him. But the Count said to Hugh, "I shan't make a settlement with Geoffrey the Viscount, Ralph's nephew, or with the men of Thuar's fortress until I hand over your land to you." So he's making another of these promises. I'm not going to give them the land until I recognize yours. None of this happened. But the Count went off and made a settlement with Viscount Geoffrey and with the men of Thuars, and made no settlement at all with Hugh, and Hugh did not get his land. And for the misdeeds which Hugh did on the Count's behalf, Geoffrey took up, oh, maybe it's Geoffrey cuts the hands off. Geoffrey took up the quarrel with Hugh and burned the fortress Muzai, captured Hugh's horsemen, and cut off their hands.
So they can't pick up arms again.
And did enough other things too. The Count in no way helped Hugh or made a good settlement between them, but Hugh is now still without his land and has lost the other land which he had held in peace on the Count's behalf. Honestly, Hugh did something. Okay, Geoffrey cut off the hands, not Hugh. But it doesn't mean that Hugh never like burned stuff down.
Yeah, he probably did too.
Right.
Yeah, because it sounds like a tactic.
Right.
Right. You're keeping the men alive. So the Duke has to take care of them in some way, provide for them, but you're taking away their ability to fight. So you've reduced his forces.
Yeah.
It's pretty brilliant, actually. Cruel, but brilliant.
Well, it feels like all of this is cruel. I mean, it's the and we're saying like the one serf that shows up in the story is going to be tortured to prove that William's not lying, and you're like,
yeah,
that but the control of these properties is all control of the peasantry, who are farming and creating what food there is. That is the it's still the basis of the economy. It's just we have a lot of machines doing it out in the Midwest. Cornfields, right? It's
right.
The people doing the farming, and it literally makes no difference to them which one of these guys is in charge. Or I mean, it can hopefully sometimes. They do seem to get better treatment when the monasteries are their lords, their landlords.
Oh, yeah.
But the nobility, they haven't yet learned how to behave. Or gotten much sense of, these people are mine to take care of.
Did they ever?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, because I don't know. I mean, I imagine it must have been a real crapshoot, like depending on where you were born, whether or not you got a good deal or a bad one, whether you got a good lord or a bad one.
Yeah. Well, a little bit after this agreement is made, there's movements in it's like in the 1020s and 1030s in this region for the peace and truce of God. And the peace of God is saying, that they're not going to attack non-combatants. And the king actually makes a promise that he's not going to as well. So that's interesting. And then a bit later, they make the truce of God, which say they're not going to have this kind of fighting except on like Mondays and Tuesdays. Something like that. I was like, did anybody, whether you can enforce this kind of thing, right? It's the.
Yeah, so they had a 4-day work week.
It's hopefully right. And then the next generation
Yeah.
comes along and they send them off on the crusades. Not all of them, right? Because this is the southern France, and the crusaders in the first campaign tended to come from the north. But it feels like yet all over again these guys are making deals with each other, and you follow, as we do, the media drama of the big guys with lots of numbers and followers and influencers, and they we can talk about who said what to whom, but we're the little serfs down here. Okay, maybe we're a little tiny, we
Yeah.
have our little tiny castle here, but helpless to do anything about what these people are doing.
Hmm.
Our metaphor is pretty robust, don't you think?
Yeah. It's just that the more we talk about it, the more I think it applies to, not just to social media, but I mean politicians more directly um, relevant. I think the social media guys are there to control the propaganda on behalf of the politicians.
Well, you
Try
found one
to.
of these great visual capitalist charts of the world's top 50 social media influencers. I think this is from a few years ago.
2021, so not that
Oh,
long ago.
okay.
So 3 years ago.
So top is someone I've never heard of. Well, he's not influencing me. Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh, Christian. Oh, he's a soccer player. Yeah, football player.
Wrong audience. Justin
One of the
Bieber.
second best in the
Wrong
world behind
audience.
Messi, I
Ariana
think.
Grande. Wrong audience. Selena Gomez. Wrong audience. Well, this
Notice
what?
notice how many in the millennials are female entertainers. There's so many of them, and but it's more of a mixture when you go to Gen X/Boomer, but millennials, so many women, and then in Gen Z, I guess they didn't have enough there yet. I think
In 20.
the bulk of yeah the bulk of the influencers there were targeting
Oh,
millennials.
wait. So these are color coded. This is interesting. It's color coded by. Oh, all right. So boomers on this side.
Right.
Ellen DeGeneres is a
And
boomer? I guess so. Barack Obama is totally a boomer. And
yeah.
he's got less social media. He's about the same as Will Smith, but they've got less social media influence than the soccer player. Okay. Um, Donald Trump down there pretty low comparatively, and in the boomer
Well,
world.
if you read the note, he had lots and lots of followers, but they made him tiny because he got banned. They wanted you to know
Ah,
he's been banned,
yeah, yeah.
right? So they were playing around with their own
Is there literally
data
anyone
a
we
bit.
pay attention to on this list?
No. Like I said, they're mostly female pop singers, or the fun. So there were Kardashian on two ends, like Kylie's on the Gen Z end,
Right.
and then you've got her half sister Courtney on the Gen X end. So that was kind of interesting.
I'm in shock here.
There's a lot. There's a lot of information on that. It was a good one. It was a good graphic.
Um, but look, even PewDiePie. PewDiePie, I thought was like huge, and he's down here at the bottom. I mean, we're not even on the chart. We can't. We can't.
Yeah,
You need to be in.
I'm
You,
not sad
you
about
need to be
that.
on. Like if this is scaled properly, we're somewhere in China, through the center of the earth in China comparatively. But
Yeah, I think we're somewhere on Pluto.
yeah. So now I'm wondering about this, because all of the people we talked about to begin with, literally nobody knows. I mean, in like percentage wise of influence, they're tiny little. These guys are the ones with the castles and the counties and the duchies and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And we're talking about the one that has a bigger house in the town. Are we gonna
So is
look
it?
to Taylor Swift to save us? Queen Taylor.
No, that is she's a really good example of what I was talking about. This is everything's orchestrated. Like every single move she does is orchestrated, and the excitement is orchestrated, and about her and the relationship for the NFL, they're cross promoting each other. It's just everything is a performance. Nothing you see can be trusted. Nothing, at least that's scripted. It's all starting to look like one of the best things I've seen over the past 5 years. Multiple people have put these videos together where it'll be one screen and they'll show one news broadcaster giving the COVID message, right? And then there's two giving the exact same words, and then three. And so pretty soon there's like 50 on the screen, 50 little screens, and and he syncs all their voices and they're saying the exact same script.
Right.
All across the country. So that's an example of what I see every time I see a newscaster, even if it's just a gossip show. It's got a certain flavor to it. They're actually easier to take because, like poor Hugh yelling at William, just stop lying, please just stop lying, right? The gossip shows aren't lying. They're just, yeah, we're gossiping, right? That's what we're doing. So, but they're doing the same thing on MSNBC and Fox and CNN. It's all just, but it's political gossip, right?
Right.
And it's opinion forming, and it's trying to form the opinions of the people who are still watching you, thinking they're going to get an honest opinion. But I don't think they are. I think they're getting a script.
Well, I love how people talk about, the church in the Middle Ages was so controlling.
Yeah. Yeah, so controlling. Yeah, so medieval.
So medieval. Yeah. And it's like, well, they did write stuff down, so there's that, right? We can at least know what they were saying then.
Yeah.
But
even that can be reinterpreted for today's audience, depending upon what you want them to think about it.
Well,
right?
And that's, you mentioned McLuhan, and we've meditated on him some, right? That go back to my manuscript, right? This, like, what we have of this thing that happened between Hugh and William is this one account, handwritten. And, the translation that I was reading from, this was on the Internet Medieval History Sourcebook, which is put together by one of my friends in the field, Paul Housel. He did this whole Internet Medieval Sourcebook back in the 90s. It was incredible, work of putting up all of the public accessible translations and such to the document. So it's like, can we test it? Well, you're going to read this document and compare it with that one. And for this conventum, it's important that, one, we have this one manuscript. And he says, the following is a collective translation made in London in July 1988 by a group including myself, under the leadership of Susan Reynolds, with some minor further amendments. Now, Susan Reynolds, that matters because she's one of the major historians of feudalism in the field. The Latin text was edited by Jane Martindale, another of the translating group on this occasion, in English Historical Review, 84, 1969, 541 to 8. And he's like, how do we anchor stuff in reality? This is what we do, right? So you published it, here it is, here's the reference, this is where I got it from. We've developed this whole repertoire of ways of verifying, which is why the plagiarism stuff is so disturbing, right? Because it's pretending that it's yours and you can't source it correctly. You don't know who said that properly. So here we're doing it. We're saying it's a small number, 9, of new readings were introduced here from her microfilm of the manuscript, Bibliothèque Nationale Lat 5927. And that's what I'm showing, that Wikipedia had a picture of the manuscript, right? So here it is. There it is. And you can read it online. If you can read the manuscript, it says, Aquitanorum comes vocatatus Guilelmus conventum habuit cum Hugonem Kiliarcum. Okay, yeah, that picture is what is here, right? In the interest of making readable sense of a difficult text, which ought perhaps to have been written in the vernacular Occitan, because they're in the south of France, right? So we sometimes changed the edition's punctuation and took other liberties, such as translating the same Latin word in different ways where we thought this made better sense. Oh, no, right? Whatever I was just reading is an interpretation of this manuscript, which itself is difficult to read, which itself is, it's like, never mind the, it's telephone and you just, repeat it all. It's like the problem, maybe this, the massive lesson in all of this is like, if we're dealing with the influencers and we're dealing with what the media is telling us, and you're wanting it to be reliable sources, that's this whole nother layer, never mind the social trust of whether or not people are going to behave the way they said, but can you even tell what happened?
Yeah. Can you be sure you saw what you saw?
And heard what you heard. And I mean,
Hmm.
you're talking about how the
And are
television
you,
shows are all repeating the same script,
yeah,
but if that
right.
script's lying, then all of it's lies.
Yeah.
Anyway, what Marshall McLuhan realized was with the electric media and particularly with this digital media, we're kind of back in a manuscript like world because we are, oops, I'm going the wrong way with my pictures. Go back to the manuscript. We're in this situation where the verifiability of information is so fluid, right? Manuscripts, if you copy them, they're handwritten, no two of them are going to be exactly alike. That's why mechanical printing is so strange, because it replicates the same thing over and over and over again. Once
Hmm.
we're in this the electronic oral world where nothing was recorded, that's one thing, and now we're in the digital world where everything's recorded, but can you trust that it was what actually was
Right.
said 3 days ago?
Yeah. It's a false sense of security, right? People, and maybe that's because people have such reverence for the Bible, which was the book people most commonly saw printed up until about 200 years ago.
Right,
Most people, if they saw it, they said, well, if it's in print,
right.
well, you can trust it because it's expensive to print things,
And
right?
it feels
And
solid and it
books are
doesn't change when you open the
right.
pages. Yeah.
And this was handed down to me by my grandfather, and they read it, and my parents read it, and now I'm reading it, and of course you can trust it, because if you can't, the horror, right?
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's like there was something called, oh gosh, was it called the Wicked Bible? There were some printing errors in it that they left a word out like "thou shalt commit adultery"
Yes.
or something strange like that, right? So this gets banned. It was somewhere in France, and then of course years later the Protestants pick up on this and say, "Aha, the Catholics banned the Bible." But, well, yes and
Right.
no,
You're trying to get it
right?
accurate.
Right. So it's kind of like that when you say, "Can you trust what you hear?" Is it a lie? No. But so they don't read the Bible. No, I didn't say that. Right? They banned that Bible that was printed in that county and that year from that printing press.
They clearly
Right?
wanted to serve
So
tortured for proof.
yeah, yeah, or yeah, Baldric. It's time to beat Baldric again.
People, well, and this is a fundamental problem at the level of trustworthiness and truthfulness, and indeed, what kind of tests are you going to create for truthfulness and trustworthiness? Which, I mean, in the Middle Ages, what they come up with is, well, oaths, right? And that's why Hugh is swearing, "My Lord, I pray you by God and this holy cross, which is made in the image of Christ," right? It's like some contact with the divine, the sacred, will hold you to your
Yeah,
word. They also come up with systems of seals, right? But you can steal it. You can steal the it's not the matrix. Wait, what's the primary seal called? Now I'm forgetting. You stamp them into wax,
oh
right? You have to have the
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
forgotten the
the
word for the what the thing is. It's not. Is it the matrix? Well, anyway, the parent of the copies, right? And
yeah,
so that problems of proof are perpetual.
yeah. Right. So even as you were reading the description of the project they undertook to translate those, when you said, and I used a different word where I thought it was appropriate, immediately I'm going, bing, what? Wait a minute, red flag over here. What do you mean? Why did you use that word? Right. I know nothing about Latin, well, almost nothing
Right.
about Latin. So how would I know? Well, you're just going to have to trust me. Well, no, I don't.
Well,
You
this
have
is,
to
I
come
mean,
up with
again,
something
this is
better
where
than that.
scholarship comes from. It's like, so I will then
Yeah.
go look up the English Historical Review. And then if I can, thanks to the
Right.
digitization projects, I'll go look at the manuscript. And then we continue arguing. And we hope by that, process of arguing, we're going to get something closer to accurate. but we have to show
Yeah.
our work through all of that so that someone could follow it back. Right. I hadn't thought
Yeah.
of this to be a lesson for tonight, but that's why the plagiarism stuff matters so much. If you plagiarize,
Yeah.
you destroy the path.
Yes. Yeah. And you destroy trust.
Right.
Several very high profile plagiarists have been forced out of their jobs in some Ivy League institutions. And there's more coming. I'm immediately skeptical that they didn't already know this when they put them in their positions, right? But other people watching this thinking, well, this is the best universities we have. Why did you put a plagiarist in charge of it? Right? Why should my child not get an A in his class for going on the internet and copying somebody else's paper? That's because that's done a lot. Or copying these math equations
right
off my phone. What's the big deal? Right? So yeah, I think trust has been broken just about everywhere. The worst thing I've probably heard is newscasters saying, "You can trust us." No, I can't. What? Why? Who are you? Do you even know my name?
Right.
Because it's a very personal type of relationship that people have with the people on the screen, especially if they've been watching them for decades, especially if they've been watching that kind of format since for their whole lives, for 50 years or more. Right. So when they find out somebody's lied, it's a big deal to the people watching.
Right.
It's not a big deal to the people doing it because they do it all the time. They just don't let it, people just don't normally find out. Social media changed all of that.
Right.
It made us less trustworthy, but is that necessarily a bad thing? People need to actually start checking references. They need to do what historians do. They need to actually not take people's word for things.
Well, see, what you want is lots of medieval historians. Well, or what me? I don't know. Yes, exactly. That we have. I mean, in the Middle Ages, they had to develop processes of testing, and we're there now, and we're watching what happens when. I mean, people have talked about this. It's like, we're in the we're falling into low trust. Well, this is what it looks like. How do you? Yeah. Unless you actually can trust people's word, you're in trouble. You're beating Baldric.
Yeah, poor Baldric.
Again and again and again. and the great, social media influencers are making you promises that they have no intention necessarily of following through on, because they're William of Aquitaine. Why do they need to care?
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
Right? Especially the more wealthy they are, the less they have to care.
Well, I mean, there were, maybe we should have had another picture of the Wheel of Fortune, right? And in the Middle Ages, it was also understood, though, that you could lose it all in an instant.
It's a roulette wheel.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Well, okay, so our lesson for tonight, the best we can do right now. Palaya was asking, did she say Walter Cronkite? I said Walter Cronkite. At least I think I did. But you could listen to the recording and tell whether I said it accurately. Yeah. Oh, he's like, oh man. Well, okay, you guys should go look at the Fencing Barrett prayer chat, because Kiltz has been taking some great screenshots for us and marking the event, with also a surf with his eyes coming out, surf-like, accept a token of loyalty from my lord. Oh, dear. Free Baldric, yes.
Rowan Atkinson was a genius. I think he actually has a degree in history, I think. Did he? Or no, he might have studied it. No, I'm sorry. He was going to be an engineer.
I think he's not historian.
With what he did. Yeah.
But the Monty Python guys knew what they were doing with their parody, for sure. But Free Baldric.
Oh, yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
The society stands or falls on whether or not Blackadder is beating Baldric.
Or beating him sufficiently.
Anyway, we hope this little lesson in the problems of the present, reflected through the horrors of the 10th century, makes you mindful of human fallibility. Because I'm not sure what other lesson there is in it, except for we're still in the same situation. It's like,
Well, people don't change. The toys change, the tech changes. People don't change.
clearly. And you know, without Christ, we're beating Baldric. How's that?
Yes,
That's our
yes,
that's our motto for tonight. Without Christ, it's Baldric all the way to.
yes. We're all Baldric now.
Without Christ, we're all Baldric now. Yes. Well, for those of you watching on college campuses, we hope that everyone, as we hope indeed stays safe. We pray for peace in the world, and that the powers that be will stop beating all of the serfs.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with some other stretched and tortured metaphor to make you think harder.
Yeah.
Good night.
Poets, what are you going to do?
I think we're going to use that as our excuse for everything now. Poets.
Yeah.
Poet. Good night, everyone.